the Story with Molly White. Today, we're going to be talking abortion is not healthcare. And let me tell you, you're going to want to tune in. You're going to want to invite your friends to listen in because this story in this podcast is really going to focus on that particular issue. The abortion industry says abortion is healthcare, and we're going to prove to you today that it is not. So let me bring in my wonderful co-host, Mary Browning. Come on in and say hello to everyone. I can't hear you, Mary. Are you there?
I'm here. Yes. Good to
There
see you, Molly. Thank you
there
for
you
having me on again today as
are.
your co-host. I'm excited.
Oh, good, good. Well, I couldn't do it without you, so I'm very grateful for that. So today, we're going to introduce a woman named Eileen Smith, who's going to be telling the story of her daughter, Laura. Now, I met Eileen many years ago. We don't even remember. We've talked pre-show about where did we meet, but we've been together on many pro-life adventures, many pro-life opportunities. She knows my story. I know her story. And we wanted you to know her story. We wanted you to know that when the abortion industry says that abortion is healthcare, that there's more to that story. It is not healthcare. So, Eileen Smith, please come in and say hello to everyone, and then we'll talk about your story.
Hello, hello.
Hey,
Mary, nice meeting you. Molly, nice being with you again. I
it's
love it.
I do too. It's been such a long time, Eileen, and even though we haven't seen each other in many years, you're always a very important part of my life and my personal development and growth, even in the pro life community and the pro life
Mhm.
work. And so, Eileen, we met. I don't know where, I don't know when, but your story had such a profound impact on my life and um, just opened my eyes to a lot of things. And so please come in and tell
Wow.
us, um, your abortion experience, you know.
Well, my abortion experience was through my daughter, my adopted daughter. She was almost 22 years old. She was engaged to be married to a soldier who was going to get shipped out to Iraq. He left her pregnant when he left her, unbeknownst to anybody. I didn't even know she was having sex. That's how naive I was. And yeah, so I'm trying to figure out where to start telling you. But my daughter was adopted. I have three natural children. I took in many foster kids on and off through the years. But then this little girl came around. She was 4 years old. She was adopted by a Christian family from Honduras. She was physically abused,
Mm.
emotionally abused. And I got a phone call one day and they asked me if I would take her. She was from Philadelphia area. I drove down there, picked her up. She didn't know me from Adam. I put her on my lap and rubbed her back for 20 minutes. And her mother said, "Do you want to go live with Eileen?" And she looked up at me with her beautiful brown eyes and shook her head yes. Broke my heart because I know you're all mothers, and what child at 4 years old would rather go with a stranger? That showed me how bad it was there for her. And he was a doctor and she was a teacher. I mean, they weren't uneducated people, they were wealthy people, and it just broke my heart. But I tell people I thought we were rescuing her, but she brought so much more to our lives. And
And her name is Laura, right? Her name
Laura
is Laura,
Hope, yes,
Laura Hope.
yes, and a joy, just a joy. So anyway, fast forward to she was engaged and her boyfriend left her pregnant, went overseas. And thank God she came and lived with us for the last 3 months of her life. We were at our vacation home in the South Jersey Shore. She joined us. And what a joy, because that was the only time I was going to have it with her ever. I didn't know that at the time, of course, but she spent 3 months with us with two of her other Christian girlfriends. They were pastors' kids, and we all had a great summer. And when she left when I wasn't home that day to go back home to Cape Cod because she knew she was pregnant at the time. I didn't. I noticed she was filling out a little bit, and I thought it was my home cooking. You know, I'm fattening her up. She was a size 0, and She was living with my sister up in Cape Cod. We had moved, and when we made the plan, she was coming with us. And then she decided she wanted to stay there. She had a full-time job and lots of friends. And I understood that she wanted to stay there, but I never would have moved if I knew at the time. The house was already sold by the time she told me.
Mm.
So, but God knew. And I'm not a person that escapes things that happen. I'm very focused on my kids. So the fact that God blinded my eyes, I think, that I wasn't allowed to see it at the time. So she left, and she went, as soon as she left in September, she went up to have an abortion. They turned her down because she didn't have a drive home, which now we know she didn't even need. Did she? A week later, she went back with her girlfriend who left her there. And the doctor, I hate even calling him a doctor. I like to call him the man because I don't think he deserves the title of doctor. But he was the son of the doctor of the king of Thailand.
Wow.
Teddy Kennedy brought him over for his internship and residency at Brigham and Women's Hospital. He ran the family planning unit, and I call it the unfamily or the no family planning unit. Of course, he was just doing abortions there. And one day his nurses lost paperwork for somebody, and he threw a fit. He screamed and yelled and threatened to kill all his staff. And that
Wow.
was his last day on the job. Some say he quit, others say he's fired, but I'm going to guess the fired part. And he came back to Cape Cod, ironically, and took over a closed abortion mill in Hyannis. The doctor before him was one of his students. He trains people how to do abortions also. That's
Wow.
his other talent. And it was closed down because the man got, I think it was Parkinson's, but whatever he got made his hand shake. So he couldn't do abortions anymore. He had to shut down the clinic. So thank God it was closed for a few years. And then he came down and reopened it. And Laura walked in that office that day without a cold and left dead on a stretcher,
Mm.
and all she needed was air. The lack of oxygen. He didn't even have any oxygen.
Mm.
He didn't have pulse oximeters. The only level of staffing in there was a high school graduate.
Oh, wow.
As was with my daughter when she died. They called her the hand holder, and it was her job to wake them up when
Wow.
the doctor went, because the doctor didn't want to waste time, just do it, move on, do the next one, do the next one.
So tell us,
And
Eileen, tell us real quick that, okay, we got a little bit of Laura's story, but she went in for an abortion. You didn't know about it. Did her boyfriend or fiance know about it?
well, I believe the fiance told her get an abortion or I'm not, we're breaking up, because Laura was pro-life. She was adopted, engaged, all the reasons why she shouldn't have gotten an abortion. Or, she was covered on so many angles. In fact, when her friends would have abortions in school, she'd come home crying about it. She
Okay.
was so pro-life,
Mhm.
and she stopped talking to some of them because she was so upset at them. So it really shocked me that. And then I read her diary after she died, and I read that he had fathered a couple of other children.
Oh,
He had taken one for an abortion. It just uncovered. Now, I love this kid, but he wasn't a believer. And I told my daughter 2 weeks before she died, we were having the conversation. I said, Laura, you're unequally yoked. I loved the kid. I felt bad for him. He had a horrible upbringing and really a sad life. And Laura said, I can't break up with him, Mom. He always loses something. Everything he loves, he loses.
oh, wow.
And yeah, how profound was that? So I heard the Lord say to me in my spirit, don't worry, she's not going to marry him. And
Oh,
then I went, oh my God, don't let him die over there, Lord, without you. I'm assuming he's not going to be around. 2 weeks later, she was dead. And I was also praying for some change in my life. I just wanted to be more useful. As an empty nester, I didn't have to work. I mean, I wanted to do something of substance with my life. Again, I felt the Lord reassure me. This was like within that month. I felt the Lord reassure me that it was coming and it was coming soon. And I
Wow.
was like, great, thank you, Lord.
Mm.
And then when it happened, and I'm looking around and people are asking me to come to speak, I'm talking within days. And I'm I'm
Wow.
coming to the revelation of God, this is not what you meant. This is not what you were talking about. I hope,
Yeah. Wow.
And he said, this is that,
Oh,
and I had not a physical fight or a yelling fight, but I wanted to, when I hung up the phone, when I got the message that she was dead, as I'm hanging up the phone, I prayed this prayer. And I know it came from my spirit. I mean, I don't even know how I had any comprehension to pray any prayer, but I said to God, I said, please bring something good out of this that
Mm.
I can bear it.
Wow. Wow.
Click.
Wow.
And so I felt like I was giving God permission to do what he wanted. I didn't know what to do. And then speaking engagements coming. I thought I would speak to a Bible study or a little girls group or some, I thought that's if I could get one child not to abort her baby,
Amen.
that would give me grace, to handle this. Just one, Lord. That happened within a week.
Mm.
They dedicated the pregnancy care center banquet to Laura. They asked me if they could, and that's where I met John Enzor, who started the
Well, let's
program.
Eileen, let's go back just a little bit. We're jumping
Sure,
and
please guide me,
it's
because
all good. Yeah. And it's great. But we kind of want our listeners and our viewers to understand what happened to Laura. She went in to have a safe legal abortion by a doctor that we don't want to call a doctor, or
that's right.
an abortionist. He was trained to kill babies.
That's
And
right.
this guy was supposed to be highly trained, highly, you know,
Regarded, accomplished.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
he opens up this clinic and sadly, Laura went there. Now, we've talked on this show many times about coercion, pressure, doing something that we really don't want to do when we have an abortion. That sounds like Laura's case. But she
Yes.
and it sounds to me like the abortionist put her to sleep.
Yes. And then Laura, as I
Or
said, was size 0. She never did drugs. She had a few drinking engagements with her friends, or that something like that, but none of them were druggy kids. But he tried to tell me that he saw needle marks on her arm,
mm,
and she must have taken a drug that reacted with one of the drugs he took. I mean, can you believe it? He kills my daughter, and then he blames her for her own death.
yeah.
And
So he
I said,
over medicated her. He gave her too much of whatever it was. I'm not.
he gave me. I met up with him. Well, first, you want me to tell you what happened in the during the abortion?
Well, let's talk about that and what caused Laura's death.
She died for lack of oxygen. He did not. He should have. It should have been an attended procedure, meaning the doctor takes care of the abortion, and there's somebody taking a medical person, an anesthesiologist, hopefully. But
Right.
he was a one-man show. He did everything. And of course, he didn't do it well. And the high school graduate, who was in her 40s, but her level of education was high school. And she stayed with Laura, tried to wake her up, put her on a pulse oximeter meter. And of course, it flatlined. And she was banging on the meter so it would work. It didn't work, so she put that away. The doctor wouldn't have that on people during the procedure because the noise bothered him. So she got the other one out of the closet, plugged it in. This is all time, going that Laura could have been resuscitated. I think maybe, possibly, with a
Chest compression,
Narcan.
or chest compressions or mouth to mouth or whatever.
Yes. So the pulse ox number 2, that took several more minutes. That didn't work. And then she went into the doctor who was doing another procedure and told him I don't know if he went in to her immediately or finished up and then went into her. But the EMT people said, what's it called when the person gets frozen? I mean, like, they've been dead for a while and
Yeah,
their arms are stiff and then
rigor,
he spent so much time before he went. That's how long she
Rigor
was dead.
mortis? Is it rigor mortis?
Yes, that's it. Rigor mortis had already set in when EMTs got there. And I think he called his lawyer before he called the EMT. I really, he was trying to cover for himself. And
such
boy, did.
disregard, disrespect, uncaring treatment of a woman that was in his care, a
And
young woman
then
in his
lying,
medical care.
lying about it, getting his staff. His lawyer proposed a letter, an NDA, for every employee that they were not allowed to speak about that to anyone. He told the one girl that felt guilty, the handholder. She was with Laura when she died. And she had bonded with her. She said Laura was a very gracious sweetheart, and she was devastated what happened to her. And he sent her on a 2-week paid vacation, and she wasn't coming back to work, and he was nervous. We got recordings of him calling her. Thank God she saved him. And
Mm.
you can't tell about this. Covering himself up.
Wow.
And when I got her phone number, and I figured she had lawyered up by now everybody, and I called her within days, and I said, "You don't know me, but I'm Laura's mom." And she said, "Thank God you called me. I've been wanting your name and number, and I didn't know how to get it." And I said, "If this man asks you to lie for him, are you going to do it?" And she said, "No, I won't."
Wow.
She's the one that exposed everything. She
Wow.
told, because he built a whole new room. He put all the life-saving equipment that would have saved Laura if he had it. Laura died from propofol, the same way Michael Jackson died. Your lungs are a muscle, and it takes away your muscular strength, your ability. You can't move your muscles, and
You can't go in and out.
you can't breathe. You needed oxygen. If he only had an oxygen cart, she would have survived
Wow.
this. I mean, it was such an unnecessary death that could have on so many levels. And then to tell me she was a drug addict. And
Yeah.
most parents are going to say, well, and I thought about it. I don't want people to think she's a drug addict on top of all this. I don't want this to go public. This is the battle I was having. I said, but I want the truth. And the only way I'm going to get the truth is to tell the truth. So I even hired a forensic pathologist to do an autopsy on her. The medical examiner in Boston insisted on doing, and when you have an unattended death, I learned so much through this process. There has to be an examination by the medical examiner, and the DA can call it, or the medical can call it, or the state police. The state police said, I want an autopsy, or it would have covered up. He told him it was just an embolism. It was an air bubble. He lied his face off time and time again.
Just trying
And
to
the medic,
save himself. Yeah.
the medical examiner said it was the hardest autopsy he ever did. But they were gracious to me. They were talking to me. I would call them every week, and for the progress of how it was going. It took so long. I couldn't bury her for months because if they didn't come through with what I knew he killed her. I knew he had it was him. What else could it have been? And I had I had to keep her with the undertaker for 3 months.
Wow.
Before, but they did. They gave me a right answer. They gave me the answer that I knew, that I believed in my heart.
Praise God. Well, let me ask you this, Eileen. So, a young, healthy woman goes into a abortion clinic in what state was it? In
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts,
Hmm.
under pressure, and has an abortion, and she leaves their DOA.
Yes.
She leaves there to the hospital dead on arrival.
They tried to resuscitate.
And
They
it
spent
was
45 minutes.
because this abortionist did not have the proper staff. the proper equipment, or even the
No
care.
staff,
Didn't
no equipment,
they didn't
no
even care
oxygen.
enough to call an ambulance right